All right, we now welcome onto the podcast Dr. Lauren Bailey. Dr. Bailey, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. This is fun.
So I tell you what, I was on a plane ride for about 7 hours, or I think it was a 7.5 hour plane ride. Not that long ago, I was over in Ireland, and on the way back, I was had a lot of time to kill because I was on the plane. And so one of the things that I did is I started thinking about vision, and I started thinking about hitting, because I feel like I've always had a little bit, I would say, of a fixed mindset when it comes to vision training. Whereas, like, yeah, you either have good vision or you don't, because it was always my thought that if you have bad vision, you could get contacts and you could do some stuff to try to get you to average vision. But I'd never really heard of someone with pretty good vision and getting to great vision. And so I was listening to a podcast on the Huberman Lab podcast, and
Mhm.
one of the things that they were talking about is how there really hasn't actually been a ton of research yet, but it's actually optimistic, pretty optimistic, that shows that you could potentially take somebody with good vision and help them attain great vision. I think it was Dr. Jeffrey Goldberg on the podcast. I don't know if you've listened to that one or not yet, but have you seen anybody who has had good eyesight, maybe 20/20, and improve that even more by doing vision training?
Uh, yes. I have a whole bibliography. Do you want me to? You probably don't want me to list it to you. But yes, there is quite a bit of research on it. I should probably reach out to Dr. Huberman and send him that. That's really funny. He's brilliant. As I'm sure you know, he's a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford. And there's quite a bit of compelling research that you can make good vision better. Most baseball players have vision better than 2015, or most professional baseball players. And I'm sure they noted in that podcast that good vision is more than just seeing better than 2020. It's about having dynamic vision, having efficient vision, being able to move your eyes and left and right, up and down, in and out, being aware, having periphery. It's more than just seeing 2020. So yeah, it's more than just seeing the bottom line on the chart for sure.
So when you okay, let's just say someone comes to you and they have 20/20 vision and they want to get 20/15 vision. They're like, I want to play professional baseball. I need to have the best vision possible because that's such a huge part of the game. What would be, I mean, what would be the typical assessment you would do? Take me through the steps that you would do next with them.
Well, first we do a normal eye exam, the whole which is better, one or two tests, see if you're farsighted, nearsighted, have astigmatism, and correct your vision the best we can with, see if you do better with glasses, with contacts. And I'm pretty thorough. I'm probably more thorough than the average eye doctor, for better or for worse. And a good doctor should meet the patient where they're at and read the patient, not overwhelm them, uh, and correct them the best they can. There's oftentimes I take the patient outside and have them look at a sign and take them to where their world opens up. And, I say, okay, look across the street and double check their prescription outside. If they want to wear contacts, I'm a proponent of eye protection. So if the patient's okay wearing glasses or goggles, which I prefer, because there's a lot of flying cannons. There's baseballs. How much does a baseball weigh? Do you know?
Was it 5 ounces?
5 ounces. A 5 ounce baseball coming at you at 100 miles an hour. I think you should wear eye protection, but I know that's not the norm. So, but I double check the prescription and outside. And then, of course, we also check to see if there's a tint that will help you have better contrast. So we check for an amber or a rose or like a plum and check that outside as well. So I'm more thorough than the average person, than the average eye doctor out, and we check that all outside as well. And then I also check to see how well the eyes are aligned, how well they work together as a team, because that aids in depth perception, and see if we need to do any work there. Depth perception aids in how well you see the ball in space. Am I going to catch a ball here, or am I going to catch a ball here? That also aids in how well you judge the ball's velocity. Is that a 80-mile-an-hour pitch, or is that an 83-mile-an-hour pitch? If you're off by 3 miles an hour, you're going to be off by 2.5 inches, which is how big a ball is, right?
Yeah, you're gonna be screwed.
Mm-hmm. So you need to be able to tell subtle changes in velocity. So we need to make sure that your eyes are well aligned. If your eyes are over converging a little bit, you're going to judge the ball as closer than it really is in space. If your eyes are diverging a little bit, you're going to judge the ball as being a little further away. So that depth perception is just as important, if not more important, than visual acuity. I test contrast. So being able to see a white ball in a blue sky, being able to judge the laces on the white ball. So this is where this again, I'm probably more thorough than the average.
How would you be able to judge the laces on the ball? What would you do for that?
Again, that's where I have a special test called contrast sensitivity. It's just a special test. Most eye doctors have that in their offices. It's a percentile.
Okay.
So you can ask that at your eye doctor's office. What else do I test? Those are probably the big three. I do have a special tester here called the synaptic sensory station. It also tests for multiple object tracking in your periphery and central peripheral integration. But at your average eye doctor's office, you can ask for depth perception, you can ask for contrast, and you can ask for visual acuity.
What about screen time? This is
Mm-hmm.
something that when I was at the eye doctor not that long ago. I mean, I always blow her up, unfortunately, with just so many questions because I'm always so curious about the eyes and vision, and always goes back to baseball, of course. But one of the things that she had told me was about every 20 to 30 minutes, if you're on a computer or a phone, you should take a break for even if it was just 20 to 30 seconds, blink several times, and try to stare at something very far away.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you would recommend as well? So that doesn't mess up kind of how your perception.
The conventional wisdom is this 20-20-20 rule. For every 20 minutes on a screen, look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. I don't know how much I agree with that. Dr. Huberman, since you already addressed him, would say that we all need to spend 2 hours a day outside. Whether even if you're reading, or even if you're doing computer work or going on a walk or playing baseball, we just all need to just be outside for 2 hours a day. Just getting that sunlight is important. Since we're talking about Dr. Huberman, he's done so much research. Being outside in the morning light and the evening light is incredibly important. There's just something about that horizon light, that kind of blue, yellow, and blue orange light is important. And I've lived that. He's right. That really resets our circadian rhythm. I'm sleeping so much better since I've been taking my kids on walks in the morning and evenings, and they're sleeping better too. For a while, I was waking up at like 3 or 4 a.m. every night, not being able to fall back asleep. And now I'm making it to 6 a.m., 7 a.m. effortlessly. So thank you, Dr. Huberman. I would try to limit the American. I know your population's older, but the American Pediatric Association does say limit your screen time to 2 hours a day. But it's so hard with school and work. We're doing school and work on our screens. It's almost impossible.
Well,
to do that.
I've heard you say before that athletes shouldn't have screen time 2 to 3 hours before a game or a practice because that
Right.
can interfere with the Z axis, quickness and depth
Mhm.
perception.
Right. So I would try to avoid aimless scrolling 2 to 3 hours before at least a game.
So basically, no
And
social media.
practice. Right.
Okay.
Now if you need to do a quick text or a quick, email, I get it. But aimless scrolling hours on end, I would avoid that. Because when we're looking, we are in unprecedented times of looking up close at screens. Our species has never done this before. In the last 20 years is when we've been starting this habit. And our eyes were not created to do this. We're not intended to do this activity. And it's showing up in our sports performance. I've heard this kind of partly why we're doing this. Coaches are asking me, why are our kids not tracking well? And there's a system in each eye called the accommodation. There are muscles that move a lens in and out called zonular muscles. And these muscles are literally spazzing out. It's a disease called accommodative spasm. The lenses are literally getting stuck. Thankfully, we can break the spasm in a couple of different ways. And this program I've created, and we can touch on it in a little bit later, can break the spasm. And where I'm getting so tickled is the program, the 3V program, is working, and these kids are hitting better. And so, another way of breaking the spasm or preventing the spasm is to decrease your screen time. But yeah, there have been so many kids and parents who have said just decreasing their screen time before games and practice has helped their performance a lot. They're just seeing the ball better.
What about fixation? What are your thoughts on fixation and holding a gaze for one spot for an extended period, especially from a hitting standpoint, or I guess a pitching standpoint too? From a hitter standpoint, I always felt that if I locked in on one specific place and just like held that, I felt like my vision wasn't as good because it was just my eyes got a little bit tired versus if I looked
Mhm.
away and then looked back. So if I was like looking at in the right field, the clouds above the right fielder,
Yeah.
and then I looked back right at the pitcher right as he was going in his windup, it was a lot better than if I just solely looked at the pitcher the entire
Hmm.
time. Was the research say that's true?
Well, bottom line, everybody needs to find what works for them.
Okay.
Uh, the only research that I have found that has been compelling is this combination of soft focus and pivot point.
Okay.
So, and not everybody, people have asked me, what do you mean by soft focus? So let me touch on that first. And my best example is an example of a tree or a paragraph, and I'll touch on both first. Or I'll touch on both of those first. So imagine looking at a tree and imagine like a daydream view of a tree. Like you're just kind of aware that a tree is there. And then you look at the tree, the global tree. And then you look at a certain sector of the tree. I have a big window in front of me. I'm looking at my tree. And then I look at a certain branch of the tree. And then I see this, you know, tuft of the leaves. And now I see one leaf. And now I see one point of the leaf. Like I can really hone in and go from soft focus to fine focus. You can control that, and then you can go back out to soft focus. So there's that philosophy. You can start your hitting approach in soft focus, which is more relaxed. It doesn't take up as much energy. Another example is like looking at a page of letters. You can look at the page full of letters and then look at a paragraph and then look at a sentence and then look at a word and then look at a letter like letter I, and then look at the dot of letter I, and then look at the I, and then look at the word, and then look at the sentence, and then look at the paragraph, and then look at the page, kind of come out of that soft to fine focus again. There's that philosophy of soft and fine focus again. Same thing can apply with hitting. You're in your batter's box. You're kind of in your daydream focus, your soft focus. And then when you become aware that your pitcher is winding up, start honing in. And the studies show, and I forget who did this study, please forgive me, that you find a pivot point. And the pivot point that the pros did in this study was the elbow. They found the elbow of the pitcher. And the reason that worked for them is that was the shortest jump. The elbow to the hand was the quickest jump.
So they were focusing on the elbow? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, from the elbow to the hand. And the reason that worked, the reason they figured that out on their own, is whenever your eyes do a quick jump, that's called a saccade. When you jump from A to B, that's another type of gaze behavior. There's 3 types of gaze behavior. There's fixation, saccades, and pursuits. You can fixate on something, you can jump from A to B, or you can smoothly pursue A to B. And when you jump from A to B, what happens is that your brain suppresses the image. And so that saccadic suppression is, you lose the image. And so that's why that jump has to be short. And so going from the elbow to the hand, for whatever reason, worked for the pros. So that pivot point from the elbow was pretty common in the pros. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I remember a few years ago, Driveline was using some like gaze tracking goggles and
Yeah.
looking at where the hitters were looking at. And I'd have to double check again, but I'm pretty sure the last time I checked it was a lot of the hitters were looking at right above, like on the hat, right above the lid of the player, right in front of their forehead. And then the hitters who were on time just slightly beat the release point of the pitcher. So their vision went from looking at the top of the hat to beat just before the pitcher is at release point, beating them to release point. And then a lot of times they were on time versus if they were late to release point from the top of the hat, then they were
Yeah, they
late.
anticipated.
Right.
I think that guy that did that, his name was Kyle Lindley. You should reach out to him. But bottom line, you find a pivot point and you find a repeatable, reliable method that you do every time. And you're right, you don't want to lock in too early because that takes a lot of energy. It's exhausting. So you start in a soft focus, or, whatever you said, that you kind of looked away. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
You stay loose like your body does.
exactly.
You're kind of in your rhythm, and that includes your eyes. You sense the movement of your pitcher. And whenever he starts to move, you find your pivot point, whether that's the hat or the elbow or the shoulder, whatever, is a close pivot point. And then you find the release of the ball at the hand so that you can pick up the release when it happens. You anticipate
Which brings
that
me
release.
to my next thought, which is how important decreasing anxiety is in the box or on the mound. Because if you're anxious, I mean, that's got to affect your vision, no?
Totally. So there's this whole concept, and this is all related, called quiet eye. And that's starting your fixation on your target as early as you can, maintaining your fixation on your target through the duration of the action, and offsetting your fixation later than what feels natural. And studies show And these studies are not done on baseball yet, but in golf and hockey and basketball and soccer, studies show that does decrease anxiety and incidence of choking. So all of this is upper level neural processing, and it can help with that amygdala hijack and can help with calm for sure.
Wait, so the fixation can help with decreasing the anxiety?
Mm-hmm. It's all related.
So that I guess what you're saying is maybe you should be necessarily fixated on one thing and not maybe letting your eyes wander around as much.
Well, as you approach, um, there are some eye movements that can help decrease anxiety for sure. That are you talking about during the pitch or before the pitch? I'm sorry.
Well, I guess yeah. Once the pitch is thrown, I mean, you're kind of then at that point it doesn't matter as much. But I guess I'm thinking that 15 to 20 second window in between pitches,
Okay.
most important 15 to 20 seconds I think there is as a hitter, right? Because you swing and miss, you get a strike gets called on you and you don't think it's a
Yeah.
strike. Your coach says something and you're like, oh man, if I don't get a hit here, then I might not play the next game. I mean, there's so many different things that are going can go
Right.
through a hitter's mind.
So, there have been uh thoughts on, lateral eye movement. There is therapy called EMDR, eye movement. Oh, what does DR stand for? I forget what DR stands for, but where you move your eyes in a lateral movement that can decrease anxiety.
Mm.
Your brain can only really do one thing well at a time. And so that can help your anxiety decrease. So, like, for example, I mean, anything that's lateral, like, the rubber, or the dugouts, just finding something that's left and right of each other. It takes about 6 seconds of lateral eye movement to decrease your anxiety. I've heard of some batters like looking down the barrel of the bat, just finding something to fixate on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think, and I've heard that before of people getting hitters to focus on some label on the bat or the foul
Mhm.
pole or just something that no matter where they're at, it's going to be there, right? It's so no
Mhm.
matter what, they can always have that part of their routine. So yeah, 100%. I think that's important.
Using your sensory system can be really powerful to ground yourself, to be aware of your triggers. This makes me anxious. Something bad happened. Okay, to be aware something bad happened. I failed. You know, struck out. I had a strike. That makes me mad. Okay, that happened. Don't judge yourself. Let's ground ourselves. Okay, let's breathe. Let's ground ourselves in our sensory system. And, our vision takes up 40 to 50% of our brain's real estate. It's powerful. It's a lot. And it's not just sports, but lots of mental health programs like, and I'm going to go off down a little tangent, like AA or oppression programs or uh, PTSD programs. Like there's programs out there that use the sensory system to ground yourself. So why can't we use that in the sports programs? When you're in the arena, when you're in the middle of uh, your teammates, when you're in a performance situation, when you're in the middle of a crowd, when you're under pressure, when all the cards are on the table, it's a lot of pressure for a kid, for a professional, when there's money on the line, when you're on TV. uh you can use your sensory system to ground yourself. It can be incredibly powerful. And like I said, vision takes up a lot of your neurological real estate. So again, using lateral eye movement using fixation, using
So
quiet
lateral
eye.
eye movement. So, and I just wanted to clarify because I'm curious more than anything. So
Mhm.
you just mean, okay, I'm feeling a little bit anxious right now, and
Mhm.
I should just move my eyes laterally as far as they can go for 7 to 10 seconds, and that's going to
Mhm.
help decrease anxiety.
It's literally impossible to think when you're doing that.
I'm doing
You,
it right. I'm doing it right now.
I know you like forget what was bothering you. That was discovered. I shouldn't even talk about it when I don't remember the name. The person who discovered EMDR was like walking through nature and discovered EMDR, and it's used widely throughout the mental health space now
Mm,
as a powerful way of helping people through emotional issues.
that's great stuff. I'm really glad you shared that.
Yeah.
What about visualization? I heard you on, I believe it was Garrison Roy's podcast, and I heard you talk about visualization, and I thought, man, that's interesting. I wouldn't expect visualizing help. I mean, I could see it helping maybe improve performance in a regard, but necessarily wouldn't expect someone to who's an expert in vision to talk about visualization for some reason. So why or is that even helpful to improve your vision is visualizing? Like, is there research on that?
Again, that's kind of a Huberman thing. And he's a professor of ophthalmology. Visualization is just an outward projection of our vision, and it's tapping into the same parts of our brain as vision. And so to use it to be proactive in our approach versus reactive can be a very valuable part of your approach. So I don't know, please forgive me. I've never hit a ball with a bat in my life. But uh, it can be part of your decision making loop, if you will, which can be, part of any sport in any position. Tactical, CIA, Secret Service, cops, uh, military. I have a friend who was an Afghanistan sniper, and there's something called the OODA loop. Part of that is observation, where you immerse yourself. You observe your surroundings. You know, you, but part of your plan is having one thought, and part of your one thought is visualizing the one thing you want to do. So, where do you want to hit the ball? That right center gap, for example. And you have to know your pitcher and visualize. And Dr. Huberman would say up to 75 times over and over and over, visualize where you want to hit that ball before you do it. And that way, as you approach the plate, you don't just believe you're going to do it, you know you're going to do it. And you don't just approach the plate with cautious optimism. You approach the plate with annihilation. You don't just believe you're going to do it, you know you're going to do it because you've pre-planned it. You're proactive because you visualized it. You've seen it. It's happening. It's already happened. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So 75 times that would be before the game starts?
But before you're at bat,
Okay.
before you're
And
as you
are you in the box when you say visualize, is it you seeing yourself from the hitter standpoint, like you're in already in the box, or is it
yeah,
from an outside standpoint?
first person from your standpoint. Hmm.
I'm sure that takes some practice to get good at.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to practice it at home, practice it from, wherever you feel most comfortable, whether that's your bedroom, your your driver's seat in your car, your, just finding a safe cocoon to practice from. That way, when you're in the dugout, when you're walking out to the batter's box, when you're in the batter's box, you're comfortable doing it. There's the visual pathway. It's not the same thing as doing it in real life, but what you're doing is creating that neural pathway so that whenever you're doing it, that neural pathway is open.
Hmm.
And it's there's a physical neural pathway that you're opening and preparing, and that way it's ready and you're confident.
That's true.
It's
Very
already
true.
happened.
What about, I know we've been talking a lot about hitters, and full disclosure, I'm a hitting coach, so, but I don't want to forget about the pitchers here. So what would be some of the things that, we've talked about hitting and, focal point, things like that. What would be something from a pitcher standpoint, focusing on the target, not focusing on the target right away? Like, is there anything that you've seen help pitchers from a vision standpoint, or throw more strikes from something that they're looking at?
Again, I think it just kind of depends on the kid. uh there was a post on, there's the target itself. I think it depends on if it's a breaking ball or a fastball.
Really?
Mm-hmm. uh Find this post. It's kind of like golf. If there's a break in the green, your target's not always the hole. You know what I'm saying? Let me find if I can find it. No, it's not gonna find it. Your target's not always gonna be. That's a really good question. So I think for a fastball, your target's always gonna be your target. And
Okay.
kind of that same quiet eye fixation concept. If you can, you start your fixation on your target a touch earlier than what feels natural. You hold your fixation through the duration of your pitch the best you can, which is not, that's a lot easier said than done, because when you rotate, there's something called the vestibular ocular reflex. Your eyes are going to rotate in the opposite direction of your body.
Hmm.
And when you rotate violently, your eyes do too. And so that's easier said than done, but just the best you can, hold on to your fixation through the duration of your action. And then what's underrated is holding on to your fixation after the action. Because if you don't, you're going to let go of your target earlier than you mean to. We have this look away phenomenon. Like right now, I have my coffee cup right here. And so I want to get a drink of my coffee. And so I'm going to look at it. And right now, I looked away from it before I held on to it. I got the relevant information. Like I looked at it and then I looked at you, and I'm not going to even look at it while I get my sip. I don't have to look at it. But when you're doing something as specific as hitting a spot, you have to hold on to your fixation as long as you can. So you have to avoid that look away phenomenon. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Hmm.
You have to offset your fixation a touch longer than what feels natural. That's quiet eye. Same thing with hitting. And it's not just about vision. That's upper level neural processing. That is that anxiety we were talking about before. That is decreasing the incidence of choking. That is staying in right brain. That is information processing. That's more than just vision. I like that's more than you're asking. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So where do you look when you're pitching? Yeah, you look at your target. You're throwing what Dr. House would say, throw to the dime. I don't know if that's the right answer for a breaking ball. I'm not gonna lie. Like if you want to throw to the, you know, up and down or up and in.
Well, yeah, I think sometimes for the breaking ball, you for some you need to aim at a different. Like there's some pitchers who tell themselves to try to hit the batter with the breaking ball because they know if they aim for the batter, it's going to break back and it'll be a strike. Versus if they just throw where the catcher is set up and that's where they're aiming, it's going to be end up being a ball. So is that what you're saying by it's a little bit different for the breaking ball?
I don't know for the breaking ball if you aim at the apex or if you aim at the target. Um, the pitching coach you on Twitter a few weeks ago, he suggested you aim at the apex of the break of the ball. So that's a good discussion.
Okay, I'll have to reach out to pitching coach you.
Yeah, please do. That's what you do with golf. You would aim at the apex with golf. Yeah. And I would venture to say that's what you would do. I'm so sorry. I don't know the answer to the question.
That's all right. That's part of the fun
Yeah.
of asking questions to each other and doing this
Hmm.
podcast. And
I would think you would aim at the apex.
okay,
Yeah.
one of the other things that I heard on I think it was Dr. Jeffrey Goldberg I believe talk
Hmm.
about is doing he was doing a study or currently I think they're doing a study at Stanford
Mm.
and within the study they're having people use goggles and the goggles decrease the vision of each athlete 1/30th of every second, 2/30ths of every second, 3/30ths of every second, and then they take the goggles off and then they just perform whatever task it is. And of course, you can imagine you take them off and you feel like you can hit anything or do anything because you just had your vision decrease slightly every couple seconds. Is
Hmm.
that something that more people should be looking into right now? I mean, should they people even think about, hey, let's get an eye patch or is there more creative ways to implement something like that where maybe you don't necessarily have the goggles that he's talking about, which I'm sure may cost a decent amount of money, but there's something else you can do to help with that.
Shutter eyewear. There's a place for shutter eyewear and vision training for sure.
Okay.
I use it in my program. I I don't think it's the first part. I don't think it's the foundational part. Um, so the foundations, I'll get to it, I promise. The foundational part of vision training is to start with the accommodation and the binocular stuff first. And I think once you have a strong accommodation and binocular system, then you do the shutter/strobe eyewear. So to answer your question, yes, shutter eyewear is incredible once the accommodation and binocular system is solid. Okay. So strobe training with those special glasses where the flicker of the image in and out pretty much overloads the sensory system. Just kind of think of it as like adding resistance training to your eyes. Does that make sense?
100%.
So when you have them off, you should be able to see things more quickly and more accurately. So it's like adding vision resistance. You're pretty much adding vision resistance to drills that you're already doing in practice. You would never want to use them to against a pitcher or a pitching machine. That's dangerous. Um, you would definitely want a solid binocular system before using them, and you would definitely not want to use them if you have a history of epilepsy. Um, I mean, it's not true strobe, like, like a true like disco light, but there is a risk of having a seizure with them because your image is coming in and out. Does that make sense?
Oh, well, after that last part, I'm not as keen on trying it out with.
I mean, if you've never had a seizure, you're probably fine. But if you have a history of having seizures, You just want to be careful.
Okay, so we're probably going to be okay with kids for the most part.
Yes, you should have an eye exam before using them. You want to make sure you have a solid binocular system, and it's valuable. But in my program, I think setting the foundational accommodation and binocular system is more valuable before using the strobes. Does that make sense? Like, I think there's a foundational system to set first. Like it, again, I'm a doctor, and there's a system. You don't just throw them on a kid and say this is going to work. Like
Right.
there's a program.
Yeah, so
Like,
it's not, yeah, it's very similar to when you start lifting weights. You don't just go in there and
yeah,
start, you need to understand how to squat first and hinge first and things like that and have the basic movements
yes,
down
thank you.
first.
But
Uh,
it's a cool tool. And there's a study at Duke and IU. They had two college baseball teams that used the strobes along with a couple of other things. It wasn't just the strobes. Each athlete on these two teams went through 17 sessions, and the end result showed 41 feet and a 41 foot increase in hit distance and a 9-degree increase in the launch angle of their hits. So I mean, it's been studied, and it did help their hitting on the
hmm,
college level. So I
interesting.
mean,
So,
it's been proven it did help along with other therapies. So it's a proven product, but there's a program. Does that make sense?
so if a coach out there wants to do
And I
some
can and I
sort,
can help you with that. I can help guide you with that program too.
okay, yeah, well, please do. What would be some of the basic steps that coaches could do?
So my program's online. I'll give you a link. Right now
Okay.
it's free. And when I do start charging for it, it won't be a huge amount. And then I'll also give you a link to the strobes. Right now they're on the Synaptech website. They're $2.99. My code will give you like $15. It's not a huge amount, but it's a little bit. Um, yeah, and uh what I need to do is give you guidance on how to use the strobes. And it's not rocket science.
Okay.
Uh, but they are valuable, yeah.
What would be some of the things that you would want to make sure coaches are doing before they use the strobes, or I guess what would be the typical guidance for that?
Um, Again, to use it in tandem with my 3V program, which is killing. I'm so thrilled. Have fun winning more games. It's
Mm.
awesome. Um, have fun empowering your kids. It's so cool. And just make sure your kids don't have a history of seizures. Um, I threw him on my 9-year-old the other day, and he did get a little queasy. So just kind of keep an eye on him.
How
He's like,
long
"Mom,
should they be on for?
no more than 15 minutes." Basically, my rule of thumb, like I wish I had mine. I like I said, I gave him to my 9-year-old the other day, and all bets are off with him. They're probably in his bat bag. Um, there's levels 1 through 8. Level 1, the shutter is faster.
Mhm.
And faster is actually easier to see through. And he just did T work with them in the cage, and basically hit 10 balls off the tee. And if you can hit 7 or more successfully, meaning you don't whiff it, then that's a success. So if you're hitting 7 or more without whiffing it, go up to level 2. And level 2 is a little slower. Slower is harder. And then again, if it's 7 or more out of 10 successfully, then go to level 3. Basically, levels 1 through 6 are for hitting. 6 and up, like 6, 7, and 8 is impossible. 6, 7, and 8 is more for like vestibular work. You use 6, 7, and 8 for like weightlifting and balance work. Like that's where you're kind of getting off balance. Um, so that's kind of more upper level. Does that answer your question? And
Yeah.
I can. You're giving me some homework. I can create a document and put it on my website on strobe training, a strobe training program. That's what I'm going to do for you. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
haven't.
Well, we appreciate it. So, I guess all this information is going to be in the show notes if someone wants to check out the program, the foundational program before they start putting on the strobes because we don't want any kids to have a seizure. I mean, um,
Yeah, that's just, and you know what? I bet there's, I bet it's in the manual too, but that comes with the strobes.
okay.
I'm
Any
fairly certain.
last anything else you want to add to this discussion that you think maybe would help coaches or help
Mm.
players from a vision standpoint or what they should or shouldn't be doing on a regular basis that would benefit them?
Oh my goodness, you've guided this very well. Thank you so much, Patrick. Um, no, I think again, setting the foundations. Number one, each individual eye needs to have an efficient accommodation system, which is laid out in my 3V program. And then we need to make sure we have good binocular alignment, which again is part of the program. Good periphery, not just periphery, but peripheral central integration. And then good vestibular ocular, uh, uh, a good vestibular ocular system. That, and once you lay down those core ocular foundations, the rest falls into place. Y'all are doing vision skills development in your reps. You're doing vision therapy in your practice. And when you do those reps, you're doing your eye hand coordination, you're doing your reaction time. We don't need to waste time on that stuff because you're already doing it. These fancy programs online, these cute little cognitive stuff that are already out there they're really cool,
What would be
but they're
what's an
not.
example? What's an example?
Oh, somebody sent me something the other day. What did Leo send me? Uh, Burtech. There's one called, I think, S2. You know, some of these really cool online ones, and y'all can always DM me on my Twitter. Even Synaptech has some, but the traditional stuff, the accommodative and the binocular stuff are, I mean, they're reaching your brain stem. They're exercising your actual eye muscles. And those are more powerful than anything. And where I'm so glad that y'all are the baseball community, like you and Alan Jager and Tom House and Ben Brewster are listening to me. And where I feel like the baseball community needs some guidance from someone who knows eyes and how to exercise them is we're getting to the foundational level, the brainstem level. It's valuable and it's working and it's simple. It's not fancy. It's
Well, I'm
medical.
sure it's probably complex from your standpoint in the sense of everything you've had to learn over the years, but you're
It's
making it
it's
simple for
it's vision therapy
guys like me.
101. Yeah, it's vision therapy 101. It's hilarious and it's working,
That's
you know.
awesome.
And
Where can someone connect with you? Where if someone wants to follow you and learn more about you, like what would be a place that they should go? Would it be Twitter, your website?
I feel like my Twitter's been a good place to start. You know, my website's there. You can DM me. So let's just start there.
All right, we'll put it's at Sports Visions on Twitter.
Sports Vision ends.
Yeah, I saw that on there. Sports Vision ends.
Yeah,
Uh,
I had to cut Institute short. Sorry.
you're good. We'll put that link in the show notes as well, so people can just click that link and
Thank
head
you,
straight
sir.
to your Twitter if they want to.
Thank you for your interests.
Thank you. I appreciate it for you coming on. It's been awesome. Been very, very helpful. I've learned a lot. Yeah, I'm sure the listeners will too, and look forward to continuing to follow you and look forward to helping coaches with your program.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.